Hello, this is Gregory Bifidis, and I'm live, kind of, at the LawTech Europe Conference here in Brussels. I have as my next guest Sally Trivino, who is a director for PwC here in Belgium, and she has the auspicious responsibility of handling forensic technology services. And if we learned anything in the last couple of years, especially at this conference, it's how important forensic technology is. It's not so much e-discovery, but it's the forensics. And it's incredibly important to have a brilliant vendor, and PwC certainly is up in that group of companies. So Sally, thank you very much for joining us today. I know you've got one heck of a schedule, so we sincerely appreciate it. I wanted to start out by make 2 points. I want to talk about, for instance, the forensic technology services in kind of a generic term. And number 2 is I really want to focus first on this brilliant presentation you made on how legal technology is changing the world. Tremendous amount of material, obviously a very good PowerPoint, but if you were to question the audience right now and you were to say to them, what did you like about it? What would be the 2 or 3 takeaways you would want that audience to have as they left that session?
Okay, well, I'm very happy to be here, Greg, and I'm very happy to answer that question as well. Firstly, I hope the audience was listening, certainly.
A lot of material.
It was a lot of material, but it basically came down to two points I was trying to make. The first point being how legal technology is aiding lawyers nowadays and probably in the future and the next couple of months. So that's the first part, and the part was a little bit about the evolution we've seen going from paper files into Excel files, the e-discovery, but now also the predictive analytics and the more advanced analytics coming up. That's the first part of the session, saying there's a lot of things out there, it's here to stay, it's not going to go away. But, and that's the second part of the session where we talked about disruptive technologies. It's not as much that the technology is changing, but the world is changing, and that will change the way we practice law nowadays. And the second session was really about the new technologies such as connected cars, the e-health bit, and how we as lawyers or people providing services to those law firms can use that to improve our legal support.
Focusing on some of those points, which obviously, as you know, has been discussed quite a bit lately, is the what I'll call onslaught of things like instant messaging, Facebook, all the social medias. At the keynote address by Andrew Peck earlier today, he talked about the fact that such things have not only affected forensics and e-discovery, but they've basically changed the whole dynamic of litigation, where all of a sudden you have technologies available to you that you didn't have, information you didn't normally have, with respect to finding out information on the other side. It all goes back to what Andrew Peck said, which was the most important thing is forensics. And you guys, I mean, a lot of the companies I've dealt with excel in that. And I want you to just I want you to discuss a little bit about what it is you guys bring to the table with respect to forensic technology.
Okay. Well, I think predominantly where you would choose PwC rather than anyone else is because of crisis management. A lot of the people that we see around here are brilliant also technically and that support as well. And we tend to focus on that for a large part too. So the data processing, the e-discovery, the cyber forensics, those are all very integral and important parts of providing services to both lawyers and organizations. But I think the critical aspect here is data in itself is not really the problem anymore. It's more the organization and the interpretation and the crisis management surrounding a forensic job is extremely important.
So the collecting's gotten easier, but it's the analytics that's gotten tougher.
The collecting has not necessarily gone easier because you've got cloud and mobile phones and all these different types of devices, and we were just talking about in the future it will be possible to collect data from carpets, which we still need to figure out how to do that. But it's not necessarily became easier, it's become more commoditized, it's standard now. people should be able to do that in forensics in any case. I think if you want to differentiate yourself in the forensics arena, it really becomes essential on the analytics aspects and your capabilities in that area, your capabilities of deriving information from a multitude of sources and being able to identify those sources. So that's going to be, and is already, an important part of forensics nowadays.
When I was up at PwC and we had a chance to chat about 2 weeks ago, one of the things you mentioned, we didn't have a lot of time to chat about it, was cyber forensic services. And PwC, in fact, I think you personally have assembled a cyber team, so to speak. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
No, of course I can. The cyber team is really, it's actually quite fun, because that's the critical thing nowadays. That's the incident response people. Those are the things that make it very sexy in a way. Cyber forensics is a hype maybe, but it's a hype for a good reason. The incidents that come in, they're always critical. They always come in the middle of the night and on holidays, and you need to be able to go and react to it, respond to it very quickly. And depending on the necessity and the level of the incident itself, you do need to do a lot of things to make sure that things are safeguarded, that the company can still continue to run as it should be running. So it's quite exciting, but having a team dedicated to that, having a team being able to respond to these issues is a different type of work than we're used to. For instance, now we have a 24/7 schedule of people being on call, kind of like an emergency doctor. We have kits to go on site and have the hardware and equipment in there that requires a cyber forensic incident response problem. So it really is an interesting evolution, and an evolution we see is taking a more dominant step in forensic technology as well.
One thing you noted in your presentation, and I want to focus on for a moment, is the handling of sensitive data, and not necessarily Safe Harbor, the Schrems case, or Facebook, but the international cross-border implications of sensitive data, which you and I know are both very paramount, can only be handled properly with the proper technology. So can you give me an idea of how PwC handles that?
Well, data protection is extremely important, and we take that very serious. In forensics, having something as much as a data loss is unforgivable. So firstly, before we go into technology, the procedures need to be there, procedures of collecting data, procedures of safeguarding data before you even get the data into your site. So if we look at the acquisition to processing life cycle, our procedures start right from the beginning, where data cannot be transported or transferred in an unencrypted format. So everything is always encrypted. It has security log procedures surrounding all of that. Once it's been put into our labs, because we have secure labs across a multitude of destinations worldwide, we bring the data in one of those labs, and it will be kept in a secure offline location. It will be copied onto a server where it is going to be processed, and that server is in rest again, encrypted, but it also has two-factor authentication, so kind of the same protection measurements as a bank has for their money.
So it's a coordination amongst several PwC offices.
It really is, because the procedures are aligned across the world. So if you would have a collection in for instance, the US and one in Europe, because you wouldn't be able to exchange that data in a particular case, the processes will be completely parallel and the same in both areas, even to the level of version controlling. So you really have straight paralleling between those different geographies.
And do you do a tremendous amount of cross-border work?
Most of the larger investigations nowadays have an international aspect to it. It's really small ones that are geographically contained. I think most of Most of the cases, about 80% of them, have an international aspect to it, and the real large ones, the real large investigations are very often global even.
Obviously, the advance of technology is mind-numbing, and I think sometimes it's beyond mortal man's capacity. And one of the things I was thinking about today was, especially for a company like PwC, which is basically cutting edge, how do you keep your technology teams up to date on the latest? Because, I mean, you could spend all day catching up on that stuff.
Well, there are three major components to that. From one bit, everyone who's joining the forensic technology team at PwC will be sent to a forensics boot camp. So they got a real proper fire drill into forensics day one. And that's a boot camp that lasts between 2 or 3 weeks. And then, say from that, we have quite an elaborate training schedule for every different type of specialization that you can have, with certain courses in that are mandatory and some ones that are optional if you want to go in a specific type of mobile forensics, for instance. So that training schedule, which is quite elaborate, is also there. And we provide in-house training, but we also get external training into that. And then the third component, which I think is actually the most crucial one, is where we organize ourselves with an innovation lab. We try to really stimulate everyone in forensic technology to keep their eyes and ears open, to try and test new technology. We even have test teams that once we say this is a technology that really could be the next hot thing for forensics, that we can properly test that, and has to do at certain qualifications that we say, okay, now we're going to adopt that as a standard across the globe, or in local cases if that's necessary. And that innovation lab, that testing team, is the one that keeps track of all those new technologies and trains it back into the training schedule.
Sally, I really appreciate you coming by and learning more about PwC, especially your views on forensic technology.
It was my absolute pleasure, Greg.
Thank you.